Hello, welcome back. Today, let's continue our discussion regarding Hugging Face datasets. We're going to start where we left off last time. Last time, we prepared the reviews dataset, and this time around, we're going to look at the business dataset, and then we're going to combine the two datasets together. So first, let us take a look at the business dataset. So here is the business dataset. It is in JSON format. And this time around, we're going to use pandas to read the JSON file in here. Okay, so it's taking a little bit of time. Now we have the dataset loaded. We can see this is the business ID we needed. This is something that we also have in the previous reviews dataset. And also, there is this attributes column in here. So what we need from here is we need a specific field, the price range field out of this attributes field. So how can we do that? Well, what we can do is first we can subset the columns to only these two columns that we need. And then after that, we can extract the price range subfield from the attributes field line by line, row by row. So in order to do that, we can design a little function here, and then we can apply this function across the data frame, row by row. So what is this function? The function takes a row from the data frame, and then because some of the rows, they do have this price range subfield, some of them they don't. So we need to account for that, right? So we're going to try doing this. If it works, great. We're going to return this value, the price range value. If it doesn't, then we're simply going to return the null value. And then later on, we can filter based on the null value. So now that we have the function, we can look at the data frame and we can apply this function across the data frame along this dimension, which means really we're going to apply this row by row. And that's what we are doing here. And once that is done, we can now do the filtering. We can say whenever there is a null value in the price range field, then we're going to filter them out. So that's what this code is doing. And finally, our end goal is to build this mapping from the business ID to the actual price range value. So we need to build that mapping, and this is how we are going to do it. And now let's run this code. This data set is not very huge, so it's pretty fast to run this. So that is all done. Finally, we're going to join together the two data sets. So first of all, we can use the toPandas method on the DS review smaller data set. Remember, this is the one we created last time. Out of the big customer review data set, we grabbed the first 100 rows as a smaller one. So we're going to just take a look at this data set again to refresh our memory in terms of what it is like. Okay, so this is a data set. Now, next, we are going to join this data set with the business data set. And we also created this mapping between business ID and the price range. So then we can do the joining that way now. So what we are doing here is that we are going to apply a function across this whole data set, right? So for this data set here, for every single element, we're going to apply this function. What is this function doing? This function is basically mapping this business ID to an actual price range value, and then add that value back to this example. So essentially, this is a one row, like in a data frame. But in this case here, this is simply one example or one element out of this big data set. And once we have this function ready, then we can use this map method or function on this dataset object here. right? So when you have a very large data set, this is a very efficient way of doing things. Okay, so then this is what we're doing. So again, we are just for each example, we are grabbing the price range value, and then we're using this mapping to get the value, and we are attaching this back to the example as a price range field value. And then if there isn't such a value, then we're simply going to say this is a null value, right? Similar to what we did before. Okay, so now let's give it a try. And this is a small data set because we only grabbed the first 100 rows, so it's fairly quick. That's good. So now let's take a look at the processed data set here. Okay, perfect. Now we can see there's business ID, there's the text, and also there's the price range that we got. But remember, we don't need the null values, so we need to filter those out. How can we do that? Well, there is another very handy method that we can use. It's called filter. So we can say this data set, then we can filter, and then you can specify this filter criterion through this lambda function. In this case here, I'm saying, okay, if it is not none, then we're going to filter them. Okay, so let us do that. Perfect, that is all done. As you can see, there's no null value anymore. Okay, now that we are ready, we are going to apply the same logic across the whole data set. So this is the original big data set. Now we are going to apply the same thing, but we're going to chain all the processes, all the steps together. We're going to map the same function, and then we're going to do the filtering as we just did. And finally, we're going to show the result. Okay, so because this is a large data set, it's going to take quite some time, and we're just going to pause here and come back at the end. Okay, great. This is all done now, as you can see. So when we look at this data, we can see that this is the first row. We have the business ID in here, we have the text, and now we also have the price range, exactly as we wanted. So that concludes this tutorial about using the Hugging Face Datasets library. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.